You do a lot of teaching with meditation.
Yes.
Teach me in a couple of minutes, if you can, and the viewers, what sort of things do we need to know, or how can we get started?
Okay, I can show you a very simple meditation technique that you can use. And what you do is you start out by just very gently, incidentally, you can do this lying down if you're comfortable that way, as long as you don't go to sleep. Or you can do it sitting up, but it should be sitting comfortably with your back well supported. Once you're in that position, you close your eyes and just let your attention go to your breathing. Hold your attention very gently on your breath. And then you take a sound, one that resonates pleasantly for you. Now, one sound I found, and I've used this for many years, that many people find very pleasant is so hum, so hum, so hum. It has almost a kind of hypnotic sound. And what you can do is start thinking that sound in a really lazy, effortless way while your eyes are closed. And what you'll notice over a period of about 2 or 3 or 4 minutes is your breathing will slowly it'll get slower and softer and quieter. And you don't try to change the sound in any way. You don't try to give it any particular rhythm. You don't try to pronounce it clearly in your mind. And it's only a mental pronunciation. You don't speak it out. So it's a lazy kind of effortless process. You don't interfere with any thoughts. Let thoughts just flow through your mind like they were clouds going by in the sky. You don't, from time to time, you will forget the mantra. Your attention will fall away from it, and you'll just go off on some thoughts. At a certain point, you'll recognize that you're no longer thinking the mantra, and you're off on the thoughts. And then in a really easy, lazy way, you come back to thinking the mantra again. But when you come back to the mantra, you don't push out whatever thoughts are there. You never try to interfere with thoughts in any way. And as you do that, your breathing will get quieter and quieter, your body will get relaxed, and eventually your mind will quiet down, and you'll become very centered. Now, the purpose of this, of course, is to train your brain in a way so that more and more, when you're in your normal daily activity, you'll be in that more centered state. So you're out there doing things, dynamically interacting with people, talking to people, sometimes even in stressful situations, and yet you'll still find that that quiet center is still there, that you have that sense of well-being, even when you're under a lot of pressure, time pressure and work pressure and all that sort of thing. So the ultimate purpose of this is to be in that meditative state while you're actually out there in action. But you learn to do that by first closing your eyes and then practicing a technique like I just described to you now.
How many minutes do you do that, and is there a certain part of the day that's beneficial to stay in sort of a routine?
It's different for different people, and what I tell people to do is to choose that part of the day where it feels most right or natural for them. For example, for myself, it's always the morning. So I get up, I exercise first, then I have a shower and a shave, and I sit down and do my meditation. Other people prefer to do it at noon, and a number of the companies and organizations I've worked with where I've actually offered meditation as part of their program have set aside a room that they use just for that at work, and so people do it at noon. And a lot of people like to do it at noon. Another favorite time is late afternoon or early evening, after the day's activity, but before the evening meal. You don't want to meditate right after a heavy meal. You'll just sit there and breathe heavily. And the reason for that is when you eat a lot, your metabolism goes way up to digest the food, whereas when you meditate, it brings your metabolism way down. There's a conflict there, and you'll just feel like you have lead in your stomach. So you have to find the right time of the day for you.
One of the things you mentioned earlier in talking was how your blood chemistry can actually be altered by this. Explain how that works.
Okay. Now, for example, when you're under stress, there's a chemical that you produce in your body called cortisol. Most people are familiar with this. Also, by the way, blood lactate, which is something that also builds up when you're doing intense exercise, okay? But there it's in a more healthy context, provided that you get enough rest afterwards. But blood lactate and cortisol are two examples of the types of hormones that you produce in large quantities when you're under stress. Now, when people meditate regularly, what happens is the blood lactate and the cortisol dramatically decrease. And you start to increase a number of well-being hormones, and they would be things like oxytocin, hormones like serotonin, hormones like the endorphins. The endorphins are the body's natural opiates. And they find in people that have been doing this for several years, meditating regularly for several years, that their average level of those positive hormones is significantly higher than in the general population. And the stress hormones, such as blood lactate and cortisol, significantly lower on the average at any time of the day or night than the general population. So there are permanent biochemical effects that happen over time, in addition to the ones I mentioned earlier, the structural and dynamic effects that take place in the brain. So it's all part of the same thing. And again, here's where nutrition comes in, because what's happening while you're producing all these stress hormones, okay, is that if you have a good nutritional basis, your body is much more efficient in removing those stress hormones, and therefore making room for the positive hormones like oxytocin, serotonin, and so forth. And in a way, they kind of cancel each other out. So the less you're producing the stress hormones, the more you tend to be producing the others. And nutrition plays a major role in that. Okay, people who have really sound nutritional bases are far less likely to produce the same amount of those stress hormones.
You have a book that's out.
Yes.
You brought it with, I see.
Yeah.
Talk about how that came to be and what people can learn from it.
Okay. Well, one of the things that's always interested me, in fact, since the days I saw Dr. Martin Luther King speak, is leadership. I consider him to be one of the truly great leaders of all time, people like him and Nelson Mandela. So I started offering programs in leadership development about 25 years ago. And I had to get on a learning curve myself with that, because it was a truly new area for me. And leadership is not just a skill or a set of skills. It has a lot to do with the character of the person, the qualities that they bring as a human being, their authenticity, and so forth. So when I started training people in leadership, I knew that I couldn't do that by teaching them a set of skills. Like, for example, I couldn't just teach them to be good public speakers, or I couldn't just teach them how to do good coaching with an employee or something like that. That, yes, those were important skills and they had to be part of the package, but much more central to the package was actually developing themselves as human beings, developing human character traits like compassion, like a natural form of internal strength and resilience, the qualities that make great human beings, people like Mandela and King and so forth. And these are character traits, not so much skills or things like that. So a big part of the leadership development was learning to climb what I call the ladder of consciousness, and that is being able to see things in life from a much higher perspective. If you've ever been in one of those hedge mazes, you find a lot of them in Britain, okay? If you're in those hedge mazes and you get lost in them, you have this feeling, if only I had a ladder now, or I could just get a little bit above that, the top of the hedge maze, I could make sense of it all, and I could see how to get out of here. Well, there's something metaphorically true about what happens to people's consciousness when they meditate regularly, is they start to see things in their life from that higher perspective, so they can see around the hedge maze of their life, of their relationships, of their problems with their kids, of problems at work, of the creative solution that they need. They can see right around the corner of that mental hedge maze that they couldn't see before because their consciousness wasn't high enough to see it from the right perspective, something like that. So it's that sort of thing that's behind the book Climb a Different Ladder, and it means not so much focusing on climbing the corporate ladder, but learning to climb that internal ladder of consciousness where you can see things from that higher perspective, and therefore make more effective decisions, be more effective in the way you deal with people, and as part of that, to be a more authentic person yourself, because you see things for what they actually are, as opposed to what you imagine them to be. And you're able to express yourself as you are, rather than putting on some kind of persona that will impress people. I think that's one of the things that in leaders impresses people more than anything else if they see the person as actually natural as they are as a leader rather than putting on some kind of persona.